Today was day 7 in Brian Walshe's trial, which means that yesterday was day 6. Even in Massachusetts, day 6 precedes day 7. Now, the reason that I'm pointing that out is that some of you may have noticed that there was no recap of day 6. I did not recap day 6 because I was just too busy. So I did get around to watching the trial of day 6, and I watched today, day 7, and we are going to recap both day 6 and day 7 and get you all caught up on everything going on in Brian Walshe's trial in this video. So before we do, I do have a few quick announcements, and that is, number one, you noticed that the past 2 days we did not live stream the trial. Brother Counsel Studios did not live stream the trial day 6 and day 7. We were just simply too busy and too preoccupied. But the good news is that tomorrow, for day 8 of Brian Walshe's trial, December 10th, beginning Wednesday, and as the judge announced at the end of court today, 10 a.m. is going to be the start time for tomorrow. We will be live streaming the continuation of Brian Walshe's trial. So definitely join us right back here, 10 a.m. tomorrow, Wednesday, for the continuation. And it seems that the prosecution is going to rest. That's what it seems like from the judge telling the jury that it's going to be most likely a short day tomorrow, because it seems that the prosecution is going to rest. So we'll be here for all that action. Anything that happens after the prosecution rests, we will be here watching along and giving you my analysis on it. So that's announcement number one. Number two, before we jump into the recap, is that I am still scheduled to play in a very special ice hockey tournament. As you see the jersey hanging behind me, that was from last year where we made it all the way to the finals, but we just were not able to win the finals. But this year we have every intention of winning the finals, and it is to benefit a very special charity, a very special organization called RCCS. The link is in the description. Do not send me any super chats. Don't send me any Venmo donations. If you feel at all like donating at all and helping the channel, just hit that link, and it goes to a very, very special cause. It's an organization, a charity that helps out families that are stricken with cancer. So we all know what that's like. We've all probably had a close friend or relative that battled it. It completely tears apart the family. They need the support that's provided by anyone who's willing to, any organization that's willing to, and that's what this organization does. So RCCS, that's the hockey tournament I'm going to be playing to benefit for. The link is in the description. All right, let's just start with day 6. Day 6, we had Richard Atkinson on the stand. Richard Atkinson is actually a medical examiner. Now, you may be wondering, what is a medical examiner doing on the stand when there is no body to examine? Usually you have to conduct an autopsy, and that entails looking at the body parts, opening up the body, opening up the head, looking at the brain, looking at all the organs. That's what's required. So here, there was no body. There is no body. There's only one person who may know where the body is, Brian Walshe, and we haven't heard from him quite yet. So there's no body. So why are we calling a medical examiner? Well, the reason why they called a medical examiner, this really started from day 5, is that they were actually testing some of the stuff that they found in the dumpster, some of the rugs, for tissue. Maybe there's going to be some sort of human tissue that they're able to find in some of these materials that were all belong to Anna Walshe, or seem to have her remains or blood on it. So they wanted to get that to the medical examiner to see if he can maybe find some sort of human tissue there. And it didn't seem like he was too successful in that endeavor. He did find certain materials which he sent for further testing, but when you're doing an autopsy on a rug, it's going to be very difficult to find, some human remains there. But they tried their best. So that was Richard Atkinson. He found some sort of blood clot in the carpet that was recovered from the dumpster, but really that was the extent of what he's able to find. Now, in cross-examination, this is where the defense started to build up their case. Now, remember, we heard from the defense, we heard from Attorney Tipton in the opening statement what his theory of the case is, and that is that Anna Walshe died from a sudden, unexplained death. It's very rare, but it does happen. Occasionally, some people just drop dead. That's what happens sometimes. And it can happen for multiple of different reasons. So that was what he was trying to develop with the medical examiner on the stand. So he was talking a lot about what this sudden, unexplained death is, and he asked a lot of questions about it, and the medical examiner was answering the questions and saying, yeah, there is these type of things that happen. Sometimes people die without any reason, with no diagnosable reason. They just die. And then, yeah, of course, under autopsy, you can see why they died. But, of course, in this case, there was no body. So, and also he showed that people could be talking and moving around right before death occurs, and just all of a sudden, suddenly they're normal 1 second, the next second they're just dead. And that happens. Unfortunately, it happens occasionally. It's very rare, but it does happen. And even to young people, it does happen. Even someone with no symptoms, it could happen. So that was one of them. And one of the reasons that possibly could be, I mean, again, you're talking about the entire realm of possibilities because you don't have a body here. So what the defense is trying to use with this expert is say, well, that's possible. This is possible. The other thing's possible. And yeah, the answer is all these could be possible because we don't have a body to examine. There's no body here. So we'd be able to rule out some of these reasons if we had a body here, but there is no body here. One of the things that he said also could be from extended flights. Now, we know Anna Walshe took flights back and forth from Washington, D.C. to Massachusetts. She was flying back and forth for her work. So the suggestion here was that it could be that sudden unexplained death could be linked to taking flights. And that was one of the things that he brought out in cross-examination. Now, on redirect, very interestingly, the prosecutor, first of all, laid out that it's only usually for long flights. That type of death, that's type of cause of this sudden unexplained death from flights are only extended long flights, not short flights from Massachusetts to Washington. And also, it's very uncommon. And again, he brought up the fact that the reason why you can't determine the manner of death here is because there is no body. There's no body here. So then everything, there's no evidence of anything. Anyway, so that was what he brought home. Then we heard from Teresa McCassie. Teresa McCassie, and I'm sorry, I may be saying her name wrong. I apologize. Teresa McCassie, or McCasey, she is the managing director at Tishman Speyer. Not Spicer, but Speyer. Okay, some people are mixing this up, so I want to correct you. It's Tishman Speyer. Okay, so she's the managing director of Tishman Speyer. She hired Anna Walshe for the job in February 2022. So she was working there for less than a year before she was murdered or just had a sudden unexplained death. And her base salary was pretty good, $220,000 for a base salary plus a bonus. She also had life insurance, which was 2 times her salary. So you're talking $440,000. I'm not sure if it's, I think it's 2 times the base salary. So that's the type of life insurance policy that they provide. That's great. The beneficiary was her husband and the 3 children. And New Year's, they are closed. So Tishman Speyer is closed New Year's. The first day back to work was going to be January 3rd, was going to be the first day back to work. Now, she called Brian Walshe, and she called him with another person there, Jeff Chad. They spoke for the first time January 4th, and that was when Brian Walshe told her that he hasn't seen Anna since January 1st. Now, we know this is all a lie, but they're going to be showing all this is all a lie. So Brian Walshe tells Teresa that she hasn't seen Anna since January 1st, and they never went more than 24 hours without seeing each other. This is odd, but last time I tried to track her down, she got annoyed, meaning Anna got annoyed with Brian. So, he's nervous to track her down, but it's already been a couple days, and that's why he's calling her. That's why they're speaking to figure out where she is. Now, he also said that Brian Walshe said that Anna Walshe was going back for this building emergency. She had some sort of building emergency. Now, she was managing certain properties, and which we're going to hear about. One of them was the DC Crossings. Now, I've never been to DC Crossings, but seems like it's going a very nice area to live. Nice apartment buildings or townhouses, whatever that area is. But this is a big area that that Anna Walshe managed. It's part of her responsibility. So she claimed that there was some sort of he claimed that there was some sort of building emergency, which she was leaving on New Year's, on January 1st. Now, she also established that Anna had no mental issues at all. And in fact, there was no building emergency, as we all know at this point. And I think even the defense concedes that was all a lie. So there was no building emergency. We're going to be hearing about that also from some other witnesses. Now, Anna also had no mental issues. She was a very fit person, as we know, physically, and she was also mentally fit. So they did eventually go to the house to check, her DC house we're talking. So Teresa went to the house, and there was an espresso box that was left outside of her house. And it was raining Monday, Tuesday, but not on Wednesday, which suggests, okay, if that espresso box is out there, that means that she was not around. There was, and the espresso box, I think, was wet. There was a camera outside, like a Ring camera, and she asked Brian, can you access the Ring camera, or whatever device it was that is security for Anna's house in DC? And he said that he doesn't handle the tech stuff. He cannot, that's all Anna's department. So no, he cannot access it. But he did give them the garage code. So they went to the garage code, and in the garage, there was some painting, and there were some boxes, and there was a car seat or a stroller there. Also, nothing out of the ordinary, of course. And they could not get in the house through the garage because What do you know? Anna probably locked the door to the garage. A lot of people do that for extra security. Now, you don't just close the garage, but you also lock the door, and that's what Anna did, so they could not get into the house. Now, that's when she got Hugh Dunlevy involved. Hugh Dunlevy was going to be the next witness, by the way. Hugh Dunlevy was the head of security, so he got involved, and he got on the phone with Brian Walshe, and that's when things started to change a little bit in Brian Walsh's demeanor. So first, he was very cordial, very polite, Brian Walshe, on the phone with Hugh Dunlevy, and then all of a sudden he got very emotional. He started crying and said he needed a minute. And by the way, just so you should know, the way that Teresa introduced Hugh Dunlevy to Brian Walshe, said, well, I'm going to bring the head of security onto the phone, who was ex-Secret Service person. So maybe that set him off, but it caused Brian Walshe to have a reaction. He started crying. He said he needed a minute, and then eventually he came back to the call. So after he composed himself, then there were some conversations between Hugh Dunlevy, and this is all from Teresa's account. There was some conversation between Hugh Dunlevy and Brian Walshe, asking him a bunch of questions like her car information, her license plate number, if she has an easy pass, if he is named on the deed or the mortgage. He said he didn't know if he was on the deed, but he said that Anna was on the mortgage. So he also said that he didn't even know how she traveled to DC, whether it was by car or plane. And that's probably that. I mean, if I had to think that may have not been true either. Probably knows how Anna was traveling, but he said that he doesn't know how she traveled to DC. So Hugh Dunlevy recommended that Brian Walshe call the hospitals. He himself called the hospitals in DC to see if they can locate Anna Walshe. And I don't think Brian Walshe called the hospitals or took up Hugh Dunlevy on the suggestion. So Hugh said to hang up and call the police. Brian Walshe said that he called. Eventually, they spoke a number of times. So this is over a number of conversations. So Brian Walshe said that he called Alyssa and Abdullah, and again, Brian Walshe was polite and calm on the phone for most of the time, except for that initial time when he first got to speak with Hugh Dunlevy and he became emotional. Now, Brian Walshe also said in one of those conversations that his mother wanted to hire a private investigator to find out about Anna Walshe. And Teresa said that she spoke to Anna Walshe at some point about bringing the children to D.C. And she wanted to bring them down even in September at some point. But nothing happened, and they haven't spoken since then. And there was some sort of women's event in December, and that was the last time that Teresa McCassie saw Anna Walshe. So on cross-examination, Larry Tipton brought out the fact that there were some sick days for Anna Walshe, and the sick days in the records only go up to December 7th. They don't go any further than December 7th. I mean, the records don't go any further. And Anna Walshe took off time for her mother's surgery, and she also did not inform Teresa that she was going to Dublin. So there's a certain time that she was going to Dublin, and she did not inform Teresa about it. And Teresa's, again, the head of HR she's the head of HR and the managing director. So they talked about the Crossings building, the Anna Walshe Crossings building. And there was some sort of health issue from the health department, from the Department of Health, that caused them some issues. And they had to put up a notice for the tenants, and it was due to a Legionnaire disease problem. So there was some notice that had to be put up by the tenants, and this was one of the buildings that Anna Walshe was managing at the time. So he was saying, and the tenants were complaining about Anna Walshe. So he's bringing some of these points out, and the FBI even arrested 2 of the tenants at the crossing. But according to Teresa, this had nothing to do with Anna. She didn't do anything wrong, and this is just a bad coincidence or bad situation. Sometimes tenants may not be happy for whatever reason, and you did nothing wrong as a landlord or as a property manager. And that was the case here, according to Teresa. She also never raised up the fact of divorce. She never brought up the issue of divorce with Teresa. So Anna Walshe was never thinking about divorce. And this was a part that the defense wanted to establish also, that they were really not thinking about divorce. This is a loving couple. Brian would never think about divorcing Anna, and Anna would never think about divorcing Brian. They were loving, and then she just died suddenly. So he brought out that she never actually spoke to Teresa at all about what would happen if she gets divorced, what would happen to life insurance or the other benefits that she had as part of being part of Tishman Speyer. And so that was that. Okay, so that was Teresa, and then we moved on to Davis Gould of Crime Lab Tech. He recovered a jacket, a bracelet, and black socks. All seemed to be belonging to Anna Walshe. And then we heard from Hugh Dunlevy. So Hugh Dunlevy kind of echoed a lot of what Teresa McCassie already testified about, but we'll quickly go through it. So he used to be a Secret Service agent. If you have to hire a security or head of security, that may not be a bad place to look, ex-Secret Service agents. He said that there was no threats against Anna Walshe while she was working there. That's an interesting thing to know, whether people were threatening her or trying to, or she had enemies there or something. Now, he texted her on January 4th as a well check, because they were concerned about her. Where is she? So he texted her. Of course, he did not get any sort of response. And then he talked about how he spoke to Brian Walshe through Teresa, and initially very calm, then became very emotional, unintelligible. Talked about this work emergency. And there was, again, according to you, Dunlevy, and according to everybody here, there was no work emergency. I think even Brian Walshe is going to admit to that when he gets on the stand, which seems to be the posture of the defense, at least at this point. Now, there's two officers that he called, two officers from the D.C. police who met him at Anna Walshe's home. And they also brought two engineers in case they needed to access the home. They did get consent from Brian Walshe to access the home. And first, he looked around the outside of the house. There looked like no forced entry. Did not look like there was a robbery or anything going on in the house. No foul play, no forced entry from the outside. And then he remained outside. Hugh Dunlevy remained outside while the DC police searched the house inside. And of course, there was nothing out of the ordinary inside the house. That's not where she was killed, as we all know. All right. So they also located Anna Walshe's car in the DC Crossings building. That's where she left her car before she left the last time from DC back to Massachusetts. December 30th was the last time she went to DC Crossings. They were able to track that. And the last time her work email was accessed was December 30th. Her corporate phone, her corporate credit card, and she had two, by the way. Not everybody gets two credit cards, but she did. So she had two corporate credit cards and her corporate phone and corporate and work laptop. They were all last used December 30th. So it's not like she's somewhere hiding using these credit cards. She's dead. License plate was also maintained until it was turned over to the police, and he did not see her since. Then we heard from Patricia Patterson, who is the shift lead at Walgreens, and this is where we got into a lot of the surveillance of these different areas where Brian Walshe was going, January 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, where he's picking up all these materials. So Walgreens, he goes there and he buys some Band-Aids and antibiotic cream. That may have been for his thumb. As we saw, he had a wound on his thumb, probably from chopping up Anna Walshe. So maybe he was getting some antibiotic and Band-Aids for that. Then we had the Venn Liquors, Joseph Caesar. He had also some surveillance from outside their home, outside their store, which is also next to the Whole Foods. And you see Brian Walshe parking near that store, picking up a trash bag, and then taking it to the dumpsters in the back and throwing the bag back there in the dumpster. So that was January 1st, 2023. Then we heard from Cade Green, who is the district asset manager of Lowe's. And he was, they were showing some surveillance of Brian Walshe and Lowe's. And this is where Brian Walshe, and I'm not sure if this was intentional or not, but he was wearing gloves and a mask. And again, this is January 2023, but he was wearing them for some reason at Lowe's. And he was wearing a mask and gloves. And he got a lot of different things there. And for some reason, which I'm not exactly sure, but the prosecutor did not go through all of the things that he purchased at Lowe's. I mean, you see some of it from the surveillance. So you can see a whole bunch of buckets, these big Lowe's buckets. You saw a mop, safety glasses, a hammer. He probably got the hacksaw there also. The hatchet he probably got there. I don't know. He didn't go through the entire receipt, which he did with a lot of the other stores. But we do know that he spent over $500 at the Lowe's buying all these cleaning materials. And January 4th, he came back to Lowe's, and he came back with one of his children. Then Jamie Flint, a CVS operations manager. So there's some cameras there, some surveillance, and he got some hydrogen peroxide and Roundup, seems like, from that CVS on January 1st, 2023. Then we heard from Gregory Deneen, who eventually comes back to Stop and Shop because they think they had the parent company. But it's essentially the Stop and Shop security camera, and there he bought ammonia. Okay. Then we had Matthew Sheehan. Matthew Sheehan is a crime lab tech or crime lab scientist, and he went around testing all the areas in the Walshe home for blood. So he also found that the cabinet above the fridge in the Walshe home, and this is going back to Brian Walshe's home, where Anna Walshe and Brian Walshe were for New Year's, there was a knife, a very serious, scary-looking knife on top of the cabinet, in the cabinet on top of the fridge. There was also a bunch of bottles of hydrogen peroxide. He screened the knife for blood, and what do you know? It turned back positive. It was positive for blood. He tested the sink and the bottles. They were negative for blood. He didn't test the dishwasher. Drying washer and sinks were negative for blood. And the basement area is where they went to the basement. There's a bunch of different areas where he screened, and they were all positive for blood. Now, there's some issue of the ceiling of the basement, which I'm not sure what happened with it, but it didn't seem like there was anything positive for blood by the ceiling of the basement, but they pointed it out. And then he went up to the second floor, and he tested the second floor, and everything that he tested on the second floor was essentially negative. And they removed some flooring from the second floor, one of the bedrooms there. They removed some of the flooring because maybe there's a discoloration. So all his testing came back negative, but they still removed the floor to do some more testing. Now, then he decided to go back to the basement to see if he missed anything. On the wall going down to the basement, he thought he saw maybe another area that could be blood. He tested it, but it was negative. Then there's, again, some other areas that he tested in the basement floor, which turned out to be positive for blood. So something seemed to have happened in the basement. Now, he also found some hair. Some people love the way that I pronounce hair. But he found some hair, and one hair was human hair, and one hair was animal hair. Also, he saw the hatchet. And the hatchet did not seem to have any blood on it, but there was some sort of greasy, oily residue at the edge part of the hatchet, which could also be significant for or could be positive for biological material. So they did some sort of swabs to get those tested, to do some DNA testing. Also, very important part is that bleach, alcohol, ammonia, and hydrogen peroxide can destroy DNA. So this was part of his testimony that if you try to clean up from a crime, bleach, alcohol, ammonia, hydrogen peroxide could be very helpful to get rid of DNA. And perhaps that can now explain why Brian Walshe was buying those materials at those different stores. All right. Well, on cross-examination, we're moving now on to day 7. So we got past day 6. Now we're moving on to day 7. Day 7 is going to actually go relatively quickly. So day 7, Matthew Sheehan continued on the stand. And during under cross-examination, he just said, he brought out a few points. Number one is that some of the testing that he was doing was able to pick up a very minute amount of blood. So I guess trying to point out that maybe it's just a very tiny amount of blood, but it is blood. So yeah, I mean, these tests are amazing. They can pick up even a small trace of blood, and they're very sensitive to blood. And yeah, they were able to pick that up. Okay. Also, he pointed out that the only place, if you think about it, you go back, the only place that was positive for blood, aside from the knife that was on top of the fridge, in the cabinet on top of the fridge, the only area in the house that was positive for blood was the basement. Everything else was negative for blood. And I'm not sure what the argument they're going to try to make with that is, but it's also pretty clear that there was an intense cleaning job there. Wherever Anna's bodies and remains and blood was spattered, it seemed to have been undergone a very gruesome, actually a very an extensive cleaning job seems to have happened there. So, but he's still bringing this point out for some reason. He's bringing out the point that, you only found blood in the basement. There was no blood splatter. Sometimes we hear about blood splatter. If somebody is stabbed and there's a streak of blood somewhere leading somewhere else, well, then that could be an indication, showing where the blood may have come from. But here there's no blood splatter, which again, for the defense, they're going to try to, I guess, make the case that, I don't know, there wasn't a struggle. There wasn't that type of murder. But again, it's also pretty clear that there was some serious cleanup job that Brian Walshe tried to do here also. Okay, so he also brought out the fact, and he brought that with a number of witnesses, that there's a lot of police walking around the area. And who knows, maybe they could have contaminated some of the scenes. Maybe they brought in their own blood. Who knows? But there was a lot of police running around before it was completely tested. So maybe that could have contaminated the scene. All right, now this was a very interesting. I think this is the most interesting part that he brought out. And that is, apparently, there was a certain officer who was there, I think it was January 7th or January 6th. And this trooper, I think it was Stephanie Devins or something. So she said that the bedroom floor looked different from, let's say, it was January 6th to January 7th, or January 7th to January 8th. One day it looked one way, and then the next day, when already Brian Walshe wasn't there anymore, it looked a different way. And remember, they pulled up the bedroom floor. So it seems like she was talking about that second floor that was pulled up. According to her, according to this trooper, it seems like that there was some sort of difference between the floor one day and the floor the next day. So what exactly happened there? I don't know. But that was, I think, just caused me to start thinking, like, where is this going and what does this mean? But anyway, also he just brought out the fact that this here that he was able to test, and one of them was human here, one of them was animal here. I mean, it could have fell out naturally. It didn't have to be from an altercation or from a murder. And yeah, that is true. It doesn't have to be from that. But yeah. So that was really what was brought out on cross-examination. Then we had a whole bunch of DNA crime lab scientists testify, and really it all was just leading up to finally Samin Salim, because this is all just to lay the foundation for her. So eventually we got to Samin Salim, and that took a while. Took a while of day 7 to get there. So we got to Samin Salim, and she testified the following: that the slippers, I remember you can go through, see all these pictures, and they're pretty gruesome to think about what was done to her. With these hacksaws and these hatchets and these hammers. And by the way, there was a hammer that was tested that was positive for blood that at the head of the hammer. I mean, to even try to fathom what he did to her, it's just hard to fathom. But and using these wire snippets, I mean, it's just, you can't even go there. But anyway, so Samin Salim testified that there were some slippers that had DNA from Anna Walshe and Brian Walshe. Very clear that there was blood on those slippers, these were recovered from the trash, remember, from the dumpsters. There's a Tyvek suit that it seems like Brian Walshe put on while he was doing this, dismembering her. And it had DNA from Brian Walshe and Anna Walshe on it. There was a tissue from a dumpster that had DNA from Anna Walshe. The basement floor was, surprise, surprise, there was DNA from Anna Walshe there. The hacksaw had DNA from Anna Walshe. The handle of the hacksaw had DNA from Anna Walshe. There was some other white towel that had DNA from Anna Walshe. There was a here in the trash that had DNA from Anna Walshe. There was a rug that had DNA from Anna Walshe. And you saw a lot of these pictures, if you were watching the trial, all these pictures with bloody stains on them. And you can, obviously, those are all from Anna. The hatchet had DNA from Anna Walshe. The handle of the hatchet, one was from Anna Walshe. The other one, they weren't able to tell. And finally, there was some tape also that had DNA from Brian Walshe. So that was really brought out. And then cross-examination, all he said basically was, just because there's DNA there doesn't mean you can't tell when or how the DNA got transferred there. And then again, some sort of suggestion that maybe when everything was crushed together and there's some contamination, everything's put together in the same bag. I don't know. Somehow Anna Walsh's blood could have gone. I don't know. I'm not sure what the suggestion here is, but there could be some contamination or transfer from one area to another area. And that's how all this DNA got thrown around and all this blood got thrown around. You're right. But it had to have started somewhere, right? I mean, it started somewhere. DNA there. Anna Walsh's blood was somewhere. But yeah, that's all he really brought out on cross-examination. Then we had Michael Rowdy from Home Goods. And you had January 2nd and January 4th surveillance of Brian Walshe going to Home Goods and getting roll rugs, getting candles. And he also paid with 2 store value cards, like 2 gift cards that he got as store credit. Seems like some of them were from Anna. So Anna got the store credit. Now he's using her store credit to cover up her murder. I mean, it's really just terrible. And then January 4th, he got a towel, some bath rugs. And again, he paid with some store value cards. And across examination, all that was brought out is that there's nothing wrong with using cards in Massachusetts that you're refunded in DC as long as it's the home goods. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. But it seems clear what he was doing, getting all these rugs and all these new bath rugs and bath whatever. So that was really the extent of the testimony of day 6 and day 7. So remember, join us right back here for day 8 tomorrow, December 10th, Wednesday, 10 a.m. We'll see how many more witnesses the prosecution puts on before they rest, and then we'll see if there's anything else that's taken up in court before the defense moves on to their case. So if you haven't yet, please subscribe. Please like. Remember that the link is in the description. If you feel like sending any sort of donation to Brother Counsel, don't. Just hit the link in the description. Any amount is appreciated. Really, even just a couple of dollars is really appreciated. It goes to a very, very special cause. And of course, it helps me reach my goals so that I can continue to play in this ice hockey tournament and perhaps get another jersey to hang in my office as well. So thank you all for tuning in for this. We will see you tomorrow. Have a great night.